If you give me 5 minutes, I promise you I will restore your inner child. I remember in my grandparents' home back in the day when I was maybe 3, 4 years old, there was this plant that I liked to play with, and it was called makahiya. That's what we called it. And maybe in English it's called shy plant or something like that. But in Filipino, we call it makahiya. And whenever you touch this plant, then it would basically become shy. I'll put a picture here on the screen perhaps if you can't get what I mean, but whenever you touch this plant, it's going to go down. It's going to be, we call it hiya. Hiya is like shy, and it goes down. It's like the equivalent of a person putting his head like this, nodding his head on the opposite direction. I don't know what it's called. Now, that was one of the moments when I really embraced my inner child the most. I could really feel it, and of course I was a child, so my inner child was still there. But I'm sure that if I still did that, if I would still do that right now, as a 14-year-old teenager, I would still play with these makahiyas. I would still experience the same enjoyment as I did when I was small, just because that was a core memory for me. Whenever we'd go back to our grandparents' home, that's always the first thing that I'd inquire. I'd always say, where's the makahiya? Can I touch this makahiya? Because it was so fun to play with them, to touch them, to do all of these things with them. I also liked, the statues around the house, because they had a lot of ethereal type of Buddhist, Hinduism statues, paintings, and they really gave me a sense of peace and a sense of inner childlike wonder inside of me. I remember one specific time when I was in the bathtub of my granduncle's house. My grandma was there with me. There was a pearl in the bathtub, and it was early morning, 4 a.m., 5 a.m. We were going to go out for an event, and I felt the pearl in my hands, the pearl that I was holding. It was in the bathtub, and I remember it so vividly. Though I was 3 years old, my grandmother said something like, "Oh, that's a pearl." And for some reason, I don't know why, but I was just absolutely bewildered, or not bewildered, but I was so absolutely exuberant or wondered because of that. However, as I grew older, I started to get into more of this dopamine-seeking mode. I started to become more of this troll, started to wreak havoc within our friend groups and stuff like that. And I lost this inner child within me. It was so hideous. The actions that I did, I couldn't even explain to you how bad they were, because I was so down bad, and I feel bad for the people that I hurt that time. I feel bad for the ones who I spread misery to, because I spread misery to a lot of people back in the day. I knew that my friends weren't my real friends. I couldn't open up to them about my insecurities, about everything else. So I would resort to seeking dopamine by trolling them. It was until one day that I learned this specific lesson from Buddhism that really changed the trajectory of my life. And I learned this not just from Buddhism, but also from my experience. And it is that non-thinking and non-speaking brought back my childhood wonder. Because when you were a child, let's say you were playing in the grass, you wouldn't think of anything. You wouldn't have these beliefs, insecurities, thoughts, all of these different opinions and ideologies and stuff like that. And because of that, you were able to directly experience life without clinging onto these notions, without clinging onto these thoughts. Because there would be not much thoughts to begin with. Children are better than us at being present. Children are better than us at living in the moment, because we as teenagers who have grown up are caught up in our own ideas about whether or not this is right, whether or not that is wrong, what the future might hold for us, whether the future will be good or bad. Maybe the past, we might be thinking about that too. And so the first step that we can take to becoming a child, the first step that we can take to refreshing our childhood wonder, our inner child, to regain our inner child, is to use the concept of non-thinking, to use the concept of non-talking. Instead of thinking all the time, we can learn to just experience, to just live, to just be. To, whenever we sit, not just spread our mind in 100 different directions, but to just sit peacefully, as if we were a child. To sit peacefully, as if that's all we had to do. As if we had nothing else to do. Because it's really important for us to know that life is not just about doing things. Life is about living. And this is life. Be grateful for the moment as it is. Be grateful for the present. Not just filling our minds with thoughts, but really feeling the width, the breadth, or whatever of the life that we have, because our life isn't forever. Our life won't last forever. And that's why one of the things that I say at the end of my videos, my end quote is always, as always, live in the now, because tomorrow may never come.